The state of being traumatically stuck in life is an uncomfortable state. It is a state of stricture, a state of limitation. People seek out trauma therapy from me and others because they are feeling limited in life. There are contexts in which they don't function well. There are parts of themselves they can't access comfortably. And this state of limitation and this half-life that they are living leads them to seek out help. So now I'm presented with someone who sees barriers around them, barriers to a fuller life. And perhaps they're coming to me because they've experienced with me or with someone in my role a push through that barrier that normally they feel limited. And so they're seeking from me some momentum to crash through the homeostatic self-protective stasis that they're in. And what happens afterward? Well, if I'm lucky, they feel better in the short term afterward. But if that catharsis has been induced by me, the practitioner, or by us in collaboration, without sort of the natural accumulation and accretion of resources that would render that intensity meaningful, then the person recapitulates the very barriers and limitations that they came to get released from. Or worse, they are seeking release. They get it, but what they get is disintegration, dissociation. They get discombobulation. They are less strong walking out than they walked in. And so there's a possibility for loss of trust, loss of safety. There's a possibility for loss of self-efficacy. There's a possibility for loss of trust, therapeutic trust. And there's a possibility in the midst of therapeutic intensity, there's always a possibility that the very defensive mechanisms which are keeping someone in a cycle of traumatization are reinforced by the very therapeutic mode. That's to say, someone is disconnected from their body in a way that's unhealthy. Someone is disconnected from the present moment, and the very thing we think is helpful actually disconnects them further, actually puts them further out of field. They are not in a better connection or a stronger connection to their bodies. They are engaging more in those defensive mechanisms of disconnection from the body. I use the word dissociation very carefully because it has a very strong clinical meaning. So let's just say there's a spectrum of body disconnection, present moment disconnection, depersonalization and dissociation spectrum, right? And what we'd like to be able to do, at least periodically, is reconnect to self, reconnect to body, reconnect to the present moment. The more someone feels flung out from a sense of presence, self, embodiment, that's a loss of presence, connection. Body association, right? Selfhood. This is serious stuff, right? I've seen folks who have been in a tender state, a delicate therapeutic state, They've seen a trusted practitioner who said, right, my job is to break you out of this mode of self-protection. And the practitioner induces, with what good intentions, induces a state of catharsis. And the person feels kind of in shock, feels kind of disconnected from their resources, feels often for quite a while there afterward divorced from their own compass in their journey. It's like somebody's hiking in the mountains and they say, I'm lost. And you say, and instead of helping them, you kind of like fly by with a helicopter and lasso their ankle, flip them upside down and drop them into an alpine lake 3 miles away and say, you're welcome. We moved you somewhere. Now they're cold, wet in an alpine lake and even less oriented than they were before. You didn't help. You just moved them somewhere. Let alone what that does to you, the practitioner, in that moment. It sure doesn't feel healthy for me when I engage in that kind of egocentric therapeutic engagement. So indeed, there are pitfalls to talk about it. There are some therapeutic modes that specifically call up sensory motor or imagistic features of a past experience that was traumatic. And if you are asking the mind body to recall that overwhelming event, that can be therapeutic in some contexts, but boy, you better resource the system. You better have a container that makes it safe, and you better know what you're doing, because there is a strong possibility that the re-engagement of that set of memories does not help, but harms, but simply reconstitutes the harm that befell the being the first time around. So harm is possible, both because someone gets into a kind of an addictive cycle with catharsis, or just because they re-encounter traumatic events and they come away less strong. So the good news is that you can name this from the get-go, right? Every time I put my hands on someone new, I say, and every time I engage in any kind of embodied practice with someone, I say, for example, my pressure level will vary. Sometimes I'll be very light. Sometimes I'll have a little more pressure. But if it ever feels like you can't be here with what's happening, if it ever feels like your body is besieged and trying to defend itself, if it ever feels like you are being done to instead of being journeyed with, those are signs that we need to find a different way, right? So that's not my only thing that I say, but that's something I say right at the get-go of any therapeutic relationship. It is not my intention to besiege you, not my intention to engage protective behavior in your system.